Hello and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast. I'm Chris Austin, and this is one of those special episodes where we have a special guest joining us for a chat. And that guest is a musician, a singer, songwriter, composer, director, a man of many hats, with his latest film SUPERCONNECTED creating a big reach politically and theatrically, with live performance screenings of the movie taking place all over the UK since last year, with another performance and screening at Phoenix Cinema, set to take place in September, I believe. Folks, it's my pleasure to introduce Tim Arnold to the Phoenix Cinema Podcast. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Chris.
Oh, of course. Such a pleasure to have you. So before we get into this latest film of yours, tell me a bit about your background as a musician. Where did you grow up and what were your influences?
Oh my goodness. I grew up in Muswell Hill until I was 8, and my mum's a singer and actress, so I was surrounded by music and her albums. She made 3 albums in the 60s and the 70s. So there was less mystery about that kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of thought it was normal to have a record with your face on the cover. There were a lot of my mums lying around.
Wow.
Although I was very shy and didn't really plan to become a performer like she was. So I guess the influences a lot really come from her.
Wow.
And as an entertainer and songwriter. But apart from that, Kate Bush, Pink Floyd, the Beatles, and a lot of new age music, Mike Oldfield, progressive rock. Those are the kind of things I grew up with. But then, weirdly, I started in a kind of what was Britpop, and so my first band and my first record deal in the 90s we were still quite progressive, to be honest. My band was Joe Castor, and it was rock, and it was guitar rock, and it was for young lads kind of thing. But a lot of my writing was a bit busier than the traditional Britpop stuff that was going on. I think we weren't Britpop; we were more like Radiohead and bands that were sort of doing something slightly different to everyone else. So that's my background, but that finished very quickly, and I set up my own label in 2004 and have been making solo records ever since across multiple genres. So now I mean, I grew up with that kind of music, but I've sort of gone into lots of different genres since then.
Yeah, and so where did you find yourself going from, making these records, and then also sort of there's been a point where you segued into filmmaking and storytelling, and was that always an interest for you, or did that slowly develop as your career went on?
It was quite slow, actually, and I think a lot of it came down to living in Soho. I lived in Soho. Makes it sound very posh, but I mean, during the 90s and the early 2000s, and even into the mid 2000s, it was still possible to have a sort of studio garret and with some welfare support and live in Soho. I don't think it's possible anymore. I was very lucky, and of course, when you're living in a place like Soho, which so many people refer to as a film set, anyway, it changes the way you look at stuff. And when you're writing songs in a room, above Soho, and you're looking out the window at what's happening in the streets and stuff, you become more of a storyteller, I think, and a visual one. And so I think all my songs really started becoming much more pictorial and with characters, and I started singing in different characters a lot. So I think it was a natural progression out of that. I released an album called The Soho Hobo in 2015, and that was a historical exploration of my family's roots, which are in Soho, but also the 400 years of what that square mile in London really meant and how it changed. So it was like a real it wasn't a film, but in my head it was,
Right. Yes.
and giving myself this strange time traveling alter ego called the Soho Hobo, which was fun and good. And of course, like a lot of singers who create alter egos, many people thought it was actually me. And
Right.
for a while, I had some fun with that, and it was great fun. But eventually, I wanted to sort of get back to actually me. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and when I did that, I moved to Muswell Hill. I left Soho in 2015, which was shortly after I'd started the Save Soho campaign. Ironically, trying to save Soho had made it harder for me to carry on living there because I got a lot of attention in the area, which was
Interesting.
really
Mm-hmm.
lovely and supportive of the culture there. But personally, I found it really hard to manage because I couldn't concentrate on music very well anymore.
Right.
So I left and continued campaigning. But that's when I moved to Muswell Hill and really began working on what would become Super Connected.
I see. So yeah, but becoming the founder and the leader of the Save Soho group, how does that come about? How did you find yourself getting into activism? Because there's one thing, what I find remarkable about what you do is that you seem to have this ability to rally people and lead campaigns against injustices and wrongs and genuinely inspire change, or at the very least raise awareness on a particular subject. How did you find yourself getting so involved in these things and truly utilizing your voice to such an effect and finding ways to do it creatively and productively?
Mm. It's very kind of you to say that. I mean, yes, hopefully raised awareness on several issues that I
Mm,
felt strongly about, and affected change in some ways in Soho, I think. Um, but I mean, it goes back to living in Spain as a child that didn't really want to live in Spain. And I was forever reaching out back to England. I think I was 12 when I wrote to Friends of the Earth, and 13 when I wrote to the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. You know, it was like I was constantly reaching out to people to get together with people or get other people together, and
mm,
mainly because my mother just used to say, "Well, if you like it, write a letter."
mhm, mhm.
Um, didn't change into adulthood, and so whenever, and still now, I mean, I think of this year with the petition that I've done for Super Connected, and we'll talk about it afterwards. But
Yes.
you know, and certainly with Save Soho, I've been lucky to work with some influential and notable artists or
Mhm.
performers, and it doesn't cross my mind not to ask them if they'd like to put some
Right.
weight behind something that matters not to me but to a lot of people. And usually with most of the causes, it's to do with the future, you know, and so I don't have much etiquette. In terms of, you know, I grew up watching Bob Geldof and Midge, and that was my template, whether you like them or not, whether you like the
Mhm.
cause or the music. I love
Mhm.
both, and I sort of ended up becoming some weird version of that. I think I love
Right.
Midge and Ultravox was my first love in music, and seeing a guy on the telly bullying people to do something good in the world
Mm,
was the other part.
mm, mm,
I mean, I don't bully people, but I don't feel frightened, and so, um, and I get a lot of joy from curating what ends up becoming a kind of artistic take on change. And I got into music because that's what everybody that was making music in the '60s were doing. They
mhm,
wanted to affect change, and I think
mhm,
Bowie said in 2000 in that Jeremy Paxman interview, didn't he? He said, "Oh yeah, if I was making, I wouldn't make music now if I was starting out. You can't affect change now." And I'm not sure he was right about that.
mhm.
I just think it's a different way of looking at things, and people care. People really care. It's just so overcrowded. We're
Right.
so overcrowded with information now. It's hard
Right.
to see through how to make art matter. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think when you start sort of shoveling around the material, people do go, yeah, okay, yeah, that's good. I want to get involved in that, and that's
Right,
what
right.
I've done. So
Hmm. The film, the documentary that you made, is it Soho is?
yes,
Um, was that based on or inspired by your Safe Soho group and Soho Hobo? Was that in part all inspired by that? You co-wrote and directed it.
yeah. Like a lot of things in Soho, completely accidental.
Right.
I think some of the great creative journeys people have been on in that area were never planned. And I was doing a lot, and I was, talking to a lot of people and trying to raise awareness about the issues, which were mainly to do with landowners and council and protecting small businesses and performing arts spaces predominantly.
Mm,
But I, I think there was a company that wanted us to make a film, and we started because of that. But then
hmm.
they sort of changed their mind, as people do. And myself and Kevin Godley were kind of like, we want to carry on doing this.
Hmm.
He was really drawn to it because he loves Soho so much. And for him, it felt like a real love letter to the area. And for me, it's like working with Kevin Godley was a kind of gift.
Right.
And yeah, there'd been a lot of footage. It wasn't really to do with my music at all. It was really to do with um, what is London if we don't have Soho. That's kind of what it's about. And that's particularly looking at the tribal aspect of music culture. Going through from British rock and roll in the 50s through to mods, through to
Hmm.
these glam punks, new romantic, Britpop, and it all happens in Soho in one way.
Mm.
Of course, there's lots of other places in London too that are important in our history, musical culture, but Soho has had a huge imprint on that, and so we covered a lot of that and try to explore why that stopped.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so that's sort of what it's about. And it's not distributed, and of course I've been too busy doing the other things that I'm doing. But I think now it would be good to revisit having a space or a home for that film. Actually,
Yeah, I would love to see it myself, and especially because that's a part of London I know nothing about, really. I don't know the history of Soho whatsoever, and so I'm eager to learn more.
oh,
um,
great. Well, we can make that happen.
oh, brilliant! Yeah. So when you were making it, did you get bitten by the filmmaking bug while you made it? Did you think to yourself, I want to do this again?
It did. It did. Like the curtain sort of
Right.
came back a bit when the wizard became
Yeah.
that's how you're doing it. There was a bit of that, which I think
Excellent.
honestly came down to Kevin Godley. And
Hmm.
Kevin and I, around that time, began having very long late night conversations. He lives in Ireland. I live in London. And out of our conversations, my ideas for the songs I've been writing that ended up on Super Connected really started feeling more possible as a visual story,
Hmm.
because I've worked with him and seen how things that you imagine become possible. I've been on set with him a few times actually. Also on the Elbow video when he recreated the classic video he did as Godley and Cream, Cry, uh,
Hmm.
where they sort of I think they invented morphing before Michael Jackson did it. And so yeah,
Wow.
I guess when I feel lucky, I tend to make great use of it. I don't, I don't sort of go, "Wow, that was amazing."
Yeah.
What's next? I think
Mm.
that was amazing, and how can I expand on that and grow myself,
Oh,
creatively?
I love that. I love that. So this new film of yours, Super Connected, it's really taken off and is making a bit of a splash, it seems. So congratulations to you for that. I
Thank you.
regret that I couldn't make the recent performance screening at the Cockpit Theatre, but I truly do hope to see it live soon, maybe at Phoenix.
Yeah.
So how did this project come about for you? Because it's about a family who get addicted to technology, right?
Yes. Yeah. Um, so in 2016 or 2017, I think it might have been 2017, sorry, I was in Italy touring, and an old fan of mine who I knew a little bit had invited me to do a show, and I never asked him what he did for a living. Really, I felt bad about it, and I said, listen, what do you do? We've been talking via email for, like, I don't know, 12, 15 years or something. And he told me he's a neuropsychotherapist. His name's Riccardo Cavrioli, and we've since become really good friends. And I'm fascinated by anybody that does something that I know nothing about.
Right.
I'm just
Right.
like, what is it?
Hmm.
Show me. What is that? I said, all right, well, just paint a picture of a standard day. And I'm not kidding. What he described is the first scene in the film of Superconnected. So he explained that his job was to assess teenagers who had kind of dropped out of society, wouldn't go to school, wouldn't communicate with anyone their own age. And he described a teenage girl that had locked herself in a room, only agreeing for him to come like once every couple of weeks, and for her parents to bring the food and leave it outside the door, which she would take. And she didn't want anything to do with anyone. It's a very sad story. But the other side of this was that she was constantly on all social media apps, and her stimulation from that world was kind of going through the roof. Um, and it sounded to me really horrific, upsetting, difficult, but also something that felt like more people needed to know about it, and
Mm.
that's when I kind of thought, hang on a minute. It's like there's one person on one side of the screen suffering deeply, and their family are suffering because they're suffering.
Mm.
And on the other side of the screen, there's a lot of companies profiting from that.
Hmm.
And that was my thought back in 2017, I think it was. And that was the premise of the story. And I'm sitting behind, I mean, these are the bad guys, and this is the family,
Right.
in the film. But I didn't know that quite literally. I didn't think, right, I know what to do. I just started exploring it with song, as I'd always
Mm.
done. So I didn't think I'll make a film about it. But as
Hmm.
I wrote and recorded each song, that story continued in my head. So it's based on a real story,
Wow.
and the rest of it becomes, what I wanted to explore with it in terms of family and big tech,
Mm.
what that looked like. But of course, I was doing that in 2017, 2018, when most of the musicians and lovely friends of mine that I was working with were just thinking, okay, he's just so eccentric, Tim, isn't he? Now it's a different story. Now
So relevant now.
there
Yeah.
was such thing as digital well-being back
Mm.
then. And, that I'm a digital well-being advocate, which now that I know what that is, I'd agree that I probably am. But yeah, that's where it came from, and then the sprawling journey since, including the pandemic, has just turned it into something altogether wild and beautiful and of its own agenda. Yeah, I'm not in control of Superconnected.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it because it feels so relevant. It feels so current, and it's such to me. It feels like it gets to the heart of a subject that's so important to focus on and talk about, which is how the digital age has completely taken over our lives. And with the rise of the smartphone and social media, it's addictive and contagious. And while it's incredible in the speed and reach we now have when it comes to connectivity, it's also incredibly damaging to our mental health, and it leads to depression and suicide, among other things. It's so ironic how completely connected and disconnected we are at the same time. It's scary. Um, with your story, because I haven't seen it yet, which is why, and it's selfish because I want to so badly,
Oh, and I'm
but
sorry. I'm sorry to you and other interested, brilliant beings who want to see it. And we made
Mm,
kind of myself and the rest of my team decided to make sure that that this wouldn't become part of the problem in terms of digital consuming. We didn't want it to be consumed. Watching a film, we do at the cinema. Watch
hmm
theatre, we do it in a theatre. But anything on a phone or a screen at home, we're consuming a lot. I'm the same.
yes.
No, I'm not. By any means, I'm not immune, but I'm aware. And I thought, yeah, I don't want this to become part of our digital consuming process. I
hmm
wanted it to exist in that wonderful way that we do when we sign up to a film. We go and sit down, we turn
Yeah.
everything off, and we're in the world, And I think the second you put something on a streaming service or send someone a link, it just, I don't know, energetically, you just aren't standing up for art continuing in that way. And I'm not advocating that we get rid of streaming services or anything like
hmm
that, but our self discipline and choice to engage with that needs some work now.
Yeah.
And so I want
Yeah.
to be part of that work with the art that I'm making, really.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It truly does feel as if we've lost that. We've lost some magic when it comes to watching anything. It used to be an event, right? You have to take time out of your day. And when you go and watch it, you do not have a device in your pocket calling out to distract you.
Mm.
All you could do was focus on the screen.
Totally. And it feels like in the old days, I grew up in the 80s and we were looking to the future. We were looking for cool gadgets one day,
Mm,
year 2000, because it would make some things easier and it would make some things cool. And all those things happened. But I don't think we thought that maybe that could be an addition to the way we were doing things back then. And I like Gilliam. Brazil is my number one film. It's like retrofuturism. Going forward doesn't mean throwing away where we've come from.
mm,
The whole point is let's have both, and actually it's
mm,
quite beautiful when you put old-fashioned things together with really modern things. It's a really beautiful aesthetic. But actually, just because when people say you can't go backwards, it's like, okay, we need to discuss if time exists before we can decide that. It's a whole other thing. I think we can go backwards and forwards and stay in the middle and do all kinds of things.
mm, mm,
That's
mm.
I think you can't go backwards is definitely something that some big tech company has planted into the collective
Yeah,
consciousness
yeah.
at some point to make sure that they can keep driving profit and making sure you buy a new phone once a year.
Yes, right. And I'm so glad you mentioned Terry Gilliam and gadgets because
Mm.
you part of the marketing for Super Connected has involved this lovely, I guess, fake trailer or fake advertisement for what looks like this headset.
Yeah.
and and I'm so curious about what role this plays in the movie and
Yeah.
how it came to be, because we were speaking just before this call as well about who created this thing, and I'd love to really get into that.
Yes, the eye head.
I had,
The eye
yeah.
head. And, um, how did this come about? So, a lot of people were saying to me at the time, when I was writing Super Connected, that everyone's just got phones stuck to their head, and I tend to hear things and see it. And when people say everyone's got phones stuck to their head, I just pictured one person with all the phones. Um, and so began sketching that, and then I was thinking, actually, yeah, maybe that's an interesting thing to put in one of the songs that I have uh, called "Start with the Sound," which is all about trying to rekindle our relationship with listening, and not looking all the time, which is kind of the flip. I think if we go from the 90s to the early 2000s. It's all so much like we don't have a mute button for the image. There's only a mute button for the sound on all the things that we sort of experience the world through online. So I was playing with that idea and then built this sketch of a helmet that was basically kind of phones with their screens pointing out, but also with a camera on it, and it was meant to symbolize maybe a tech company in the future who had figured out a way to fool people into thinking that this gadget could enlive their ability to listen to music and appreciate it again. You can tell it's a musician that's come up with it. And the reason was because you would be able to see things, and that would stimulate your hearing. Actually, the idea in the story was that this is just another way to upload more information from the human into the system of the company. Which, when I wrote that nobody was talking about AI collecting data and information from human beings to create a supercomputer. So,
wow,
I didn't know about any of that. I see it now and go, okay, so it was
oh
like,
boy,
it's all my fault. No, and of course, I had no idea how to make that. It was just a fantasy or a dream, really, because it existed in my head. To make that Gilliam distinction between fantasy and dreams. It was a dream. I really wanted to see if I could make it. And I knew Valerie Charlton a little bit because her son had worked with me on the Soho Hobo album, Judd Charlton, fabulous actor and a dear friend for many years. And I just said, do you think your mum would let me go ask her some advice? And he was like, yeah, sure. So I went to meet Val and explained what I just explained to you and said, do you think how would I do it? What would it? And she started talking about different ways to do it. And we were talking for like 4 or 5 hours about all the themes. And it was just fascinating.
Wow.
Someone who'd worked with, Gilliam, Spielberg and, Brian Fowler and all the puppets. And her mind is, you just get lost in this. It's like an imagination soup that you never want to get out of. And I'm very privileged to have worked with her in that soup for about 6 months,
Wow.
And anyway, at the end of that first meeting, she just said, oh, listen, let me have a go. It was like, I was like, really? I've got no budget or anything. She was sort of like, yeah, well, let me see it. So I like the idea. Let me go. And then we just started piecing it together and over the course of 3 months initially, and then tweaking for another 3 months.
That is so exciting. Well, so you have it there next to you.
I do, because I've never shown it, and I knew it might be an interesting thing.
Oh my goodness!
I have to. There we go.
Look at that thing.
There we go. I've just. It's full, and you can see the sides there, the kind of earpieces. These are sculpted. I mean, these sculpted though, same as the top. This was this kind of Hellenic feel, like the ancient Greece runs all the way through SUPERCONNECTED, and with Aeolus, and it's a little bit to do with my experience with some of the big tech companies that really used to speak about ancient Greek philosophy in their speeches about their products, and it was like, what? It was like, well, a big tech company, if they're really trying to get you to buy their product, then they'll probably go for the full ancient Greek. But it was intentional that this would be kind of, Doctor Who as well. I wanted it to be not like when you see those headsets. Shall I put it down?
That is so fascinating. That is ripped. That could be right in Brazil. That would not look out of place.
I know. And a lot of people have worn this. A lot of people
really?
Not an easy experience, I must say, in the story or in real life.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's fun, and it all started with that actually, which is a 1968 Dart Super 8 camera. That's just
Wow.
was all
Yeah.
that was left of it. I've got the rest of it out the back somewhere in the studio. So yeah,
Amazing. You must be so proud of that. I mean, that is,
I
it's incredible how that's come to be, how that's come to exist.
it's just insane, and the early drawings of it. I mean, it's changed so much. It's Val's kind of work and spirit really on it. And God, she, in terms of weighing it and making sure that she built a box which is down there, it's too heavy to lift, and so that it wouldn't get damaged. So much thought had went into it, and I couldn't really believe that was happening. And then if it's all right to carry on, I'll just tell you that how that then
Please,
merged into
please.
how it appears in the film, that
Yeah.
she introduced me to a special effects supervisor from Frame Store, who have done everything from the Harry Potter films to Gravity. They won the Oscar for the CGI and special effects work on Gravity.
Wow.
And she introduced me to her friend who was, working there. And he said, "Oh, yeah, have you thought about just digitizing that and so that you could do different things with it?" I was like, "I could, know." And he was like, "No, I could have a go at that." And literally, this is how it all kind of manifested. And within a couple of weeks, I was visiting the Frame Store offices and meeting this wonderful animation team that they just volunteered to help bring this whole thing to life. And I was finishing off Soho Is, so I was in another studio with Stephen Fry, and I just said, "Hey, I've got like a script. It's only a couple of minutes long for this advert for this iHead for this other project. Would you take a look at it? And if you like it, maybe it'd be great if you're up for doing." And Stephen, of course, known well now more than was then for his expertise on Greek mythology, found it really funny, and I think he's been an influencer for certain products over the last 20 years, not on purpose, but I think a first adopter of tech stuff that has been really great. And then rather liked the idea of poking fun at that, I think.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but of course, now what's funny is that in the process of me getting the film out there, Stephen's actually moved off social media, and he's done the full whatever it's called 360. From being one to bring us into it, he's now suggesting that we might spend less time on it.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
so yeah, having that scene with like an animated version of that was made, it's made in real life. It was made in a beautiful animation. Stephen Fry did the narration, and I'm still sitting here, existing on very little, with these incredible talents, giant talents.
It's like a pinch me. Is this happening? Yeah.
It really has been, and it didn't stop. But of course, what did stop as soon as I finished editing the film in 2019 was any plan to release it, because I understood by the time we finished editing and shooting, this is a film that's critiquing our use of screens. It's
Mm.
not criticizing, but it is
Mm.
absolutely critique, and it is
Mm.
the fact that we need to think carefully, and especially for younger people. And then we went into the pandemic, and Nick Alderton, who supervised the story and re-edited certain parts of the film for me, just said, "I don't think this is the right time for you to push forward with a film that's about screens." He said,
Yeah.
because we were all just going into Zoom accounts and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
of course I had to. It's had to be incubated all the way through 2020, and I did another album, and and of course I couldn't release the album either for Super Connected, because the reason I made the film was so that a concept album was at least acceptable, because you could watch a film as well. Nobody listens to whole albums anymore, apart from
Sure.
musicians, I think, and some people, of course, do. But on the whole, It's not something Daniel Ek at Spotify is driving everyone to do. Hey, listen,
Yeah.
don't do any flipping out from a different song to a. So that was the reason. I was like, I had to not shelve it all, but just leave it
Hmm.
of incubating. It was like having a baby in intensive care for 18 months.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, and so you're not streaming the film, you are screening it alongside this album as live performances.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how does that go when it comes to the audience and the subject matter? Because I mean, I love to go to film concerts or any live event, and I went to see Dances with Wolves live in
Oh,
concert. Um, yeah, I've said it about 4 times on this podcast already. I'll say it again because it was so incredible. But
yeah.
what I'll never understand is the people who sit there and take their phones out and record a couple minutes of it. And I
Yeah.
always wonder why. I mean, what are you going to do with that footage? It's going to sit on your phone unwatched forever.
Yeah.
You're not present when you've got that device held in front of you. You're not experiencing anything. Or the people who are texting or just checking their messages midway through a show. Have you found that? I mean, I imagine it must be very difficult if you're an audience member in your movie to then feel the urge to do that.
Yeah. Well, first of all the shows that we've done have been phone free, and not in a kind of processing. You can't. It's not. It's illegal to have your phone. But Kate Alderton, who's my partner and one of the lead actresses in the film, we met making the film.
Hmm.
We've been together ever since making the film. But she's a theatre maker as well. And when we were coming out of the pandemic, I had two things I was desperate to do. One of them was perform the album live, which I've been
Hmm.
for 2 years, not being able to perform live. And
Yeah.
the other one was for people to see the film. And I said to her, I just do both at the same time. And I said, look, well, let's see what that looks like. And I sang in front of the film as if an audience was there, rehearsing at my home studio. And at the end, she said, that's not going to work. She said, I'm looking at you and I'm missing the story. I'm looking at the
Ah.
story and I'm missing you. It's ridiculous.
Mm.
And then she had the brilliant idea, which changed everything for the audience. She said, I know, why don't you look at the film as well?
Hmm.
Of course, the performer that had been in lockdown for like nearly whatever it was, 3, 4 times over the course of 18 months was like, what? I want to perform to people. What do you think? Just wait, just turn. So I've turned my back on what would be the audience, and I'm performing and singing a song to the story. And then she began saying, "Okay, now turn around." And we workshopped that for months and months and months. And she's directed a theatre show out of the film, the album, and me performing live. So,
Wow.
and I really think she's a genius because I could never have worked that out. And what's happened as a result is that I become a bridge between the audience and the family that we're rooting for in the film.
Wow.
And I'm also impacting stuff that's happening on screen, and
Ooh.
stuff that's happening on screen is impacting me. And in the middle of it all, we've achieved an awareness, and I can say this now because we've done the kind of feedback sessions and forms from people that have seen the live screening, if you want to call it that. And everyone says they become hyper aware of their own attention because they're looking at Tim singing, they're looking at the story, they're thinking about their own phone, which they've put in a pouch because we've talked about that.
Oh. Oh. Interesting.
And
Hmm.
this whole awareness of our attention becomes suddenly tangible in a way that it's not when we're just, I don't know, watching a film or you on
Hmm.
a phone or watching a show. And the stories that have come from people in the audience is amazing. So we don't tell people you can't have your phone on, but we do say it's an enhanced experience if you put your phone in one of our pouches because you're going to have a struggle if anyway. And Kate's directed it very beautifully. So much so that a lot of audience members don't realise I'm acting on stage, which is
Right.
great because
Right.
they're in it, you know.
Yeah.
People are like, "Wow, you did that perfect, like really well in time and stuff." It's like we've rehearsed this for a long time, and I guess no one's done it before. And I'm not the only one on stage. Sarah Kershaw, who's a performance artist and amazing pianist and singer, is on the other side. So, kind of without realizing, to tell a kind of story about modern technology, we've gone straight back to the silent movie era when people said, "How do we make the film more interesting for audiences?" It was like, "Well, let's get an organ player at the side." And so the pair of us are either side of the screen, literally because Kate and I were trying to find out a way to enhance an audience's experience.
That is incredible.
And not
That
doing it,
sounds
I mean, just singing the album at them.
right, right. That's amazing, that adjustment that she gave, because talking about it affects you. So it's like a call and response. It's like the music is motivated by what's occurring on screen
Yeah.
rather than just occurring for the sake of it. That's wow. That sounds
Yeah.
great.
I mean, it was a wow idea when we had it, but we hadn't done it in front of an audience at that point.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Really important. We did a few kind of what do you call dry runs and work
Hmm.
things for friends and stuff. But it became clear really quickly that it was a new form. You know, it's kind of new format, and then by that point, I was like, I'm not going to go to streaming services with this.
Yeah.
We'll kill it.
Right.
This is like a living film. It's thrilling. I feel very lucky, and it's much more grand an idea than I ever thought. I just thought I was making kind of expanded music video for my album originally.
Right. I see. It's amazing how that happens.
To have come up with this idea, it's between me and Kate, and the evolution of doing the live events. Yeah.
Incredible. And you recently launched, as you said earlier, a government super connected petition
Mm,
to have certain services be a non-digital option because everything is digitized, and that
yeah.
includes healthcare and things like that. This asks for the right to choose, and it's been backed by many people, including stars like Imelda Staunton, Stephen Fry, as well as doctors, politicians, and people across the board.
Yeah.
Has it been encouraging receiving that support and knowing that so many people out there feel so strongly about this as you do?
Yeah, actually, I'm someone that it has been really heartening because I'm used to um, having different ideas about living life. To most people, I think I do things. I've always done things a bit differently,
Hmm.
um, and when you put something like that out into the universe, and certainly when you write letters to notable, uh, you know, public figures,
Hmm.
and they come back and join, and then and a lot of people in the general public as well join. It for me personally, it's really nice. It's like not that strange.
Hmm. So
Um,
affirming.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's affirming. Uh, but what's really important about it, as you said at the beginning about raising awareness, it doesn't. I always think you don't need to win these things.
Hmm.
That's a very kind of binary kind of you either win or you lose. And it's like,
Hmm.
not about that. It's about expressing how you feel and facilitating other people's expression who don't
Hmm.
feel they can talk about stuff like that. And I wanted to include everyone. There's been a lot of different groups concerned about the acceleration of our use of technology, whether it's to do with children in schools, whether it's to do with elderly people who shouldn't be expected to know how to find a password and a
Yeah.
login on an
Yeah.
iPad and what the security code is for, to
Hmm.
get their
Hmm.
medical report, whatever it is.
Hmm.
There's both ends of the spectrum, and I think I tried to come up with an idea that would serve everyone. And really, I feel blessed. I had an amazing analogy childhood with some non-smart digital things as I got older.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was an Apple specialist by the time I was 35. I mean, I worked at Apple for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I'm certified Apple specialist. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been through, you got to go through it to come out of it like I have, to
Mm.
give
Mm.
up a lot of, like, I haven't had a smartphone for over a year now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm really living it now. But I think to be able to express to people who are very young and through no fault of their own, don't know there's a choice. Why
Mm.
would you
Mm.
know? Apple or Google or Meta, they don't make adverts to say, hey, you can try these products that we've made, which are amazing and link into your digital life and blah, blah, blah. Or you could do this with your
Yeah.
dog at the weekend and look eye to eye to, but they don't do that. They don't do that. We're doing that.
Right.
That's why we're doing we do screenless socials after the shows, not because we think we should live in a world without technology. We think people born into this world should be much more aware of how life can be and how life has been. It's that past and
Mm-hmm.
future. They're not enemies. That's how we live. Knowing. I think it was Yuval Noah Harari, the author of *Sapiens*. He said that history it isn't the past. History is the change in every age.
Mm.
It's all relevant.
Mm.
Everything that's happened in the past is relevant, and I fear tech companies trying to make younger people forget that.
Right.
There's so much division between generations now as well, and I do feel that that's been triggered a little bit by tech companies, and
Yeah.
I really feel that mentorship is such an important. That's how I've got, done the life I've had being mentored, whether it is people like Lindsay Kemp, Stephen Fry to a degree. I don't think he'd call himself a mentor, but I feel very mentored by him in the time that we've known each other. Having that relationship between young and old is so
Mm.
crucial. And
Mm.
where is that story?
Mm.
Where is that story in the digital culture that is getting shoved into our eyeballs all the
Mm-hmm.
time? And so I think that's what the petition's about. It's about, let's go to the future. Let's make better technology. Let's make innovative technology, but let's make sure innovation creates more choices, not less.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could keep going. I mean, I could keep talking about this subject for hours more. But
It's
I
a
mean,
subject. It's huge. Yeah.
yeah, it is huge and it's all encompassing, and we need to keep talking about it. But
Yeah.
I'll stop here for now. But I just want to say I applaud you for bringing a light to this subject because it is so important. Send more light, as is the title of one of your songs made for the film, a lovely song. I thank you for fighting to do good and bringing awareness to things and advocating for positive change because the world feels like a hopeless place at times. And it's so encouraging to know there are people out there like yourself willing to do something about it and to do it in a creative, engaging, compelling, thought provoking, and entertaining way. How can we ask for anything more?
No, very sweet of you, and it makes me feel like I might have done something right with this project.
Yeah.
You'll have to see it to let me know.
Right, absolutely.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Welcome. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to jump on here and have a chat. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, a real pleasure for me as well, just to focus on the film as well, and cinema being one of those art forms that is, incredibly precious to me and to so many
Mm,
people, and we have to guide that into the future as well, I think.
definitely. I wish you all the best going forward, and I hope to see you maybe at Phoenix Cinema or at another one of these super
Yeah,
connected live events.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up here for now, but let's keep the conversation going. Look out for Tim Arnold's next live Super Connected event near you. It will be at Phoenix Cinema on 26th of September. Sign the petition if you can, and we'll see you back here soon. Our music and editing is by Stefan Krieger. You can find more of his stuff at stefan-krieger.com. We'll be back soon, everybody. Bye for now.
So I can see the love